Shadow work reveals something about shame that most people spend their entire lives trying not to look at. Shame is the emotion underneath the inner critic. It is what fuels the self-sabotage. It is why insight alone so rarely produces change. It is the reason so many people understand themselves perfectly and still cannot stop the patterns. Shame does not respond to understanding the way other emotions do. It responds to something different entirely. Today, we are going to turn toward it directly, not to analyze it from a safe distance, but to actually move toward it. And that is what today is about. Before we begin, there is one distinction that changes everything. Guilt says, I did something bad, whereas shame says, I am bad. That distance between behavior and identity is the entire difference between them. Guilt is uncomfortable, but it is workable. It tells you that your actions conflicted with your values. It points toward repair. Shame does not point toward repair. Shame points inward. It says, the problem is not what you did. The problem is what you are. Shame also has a physical quality that guilt does not. You feel it in the body before you have words for it. A flush of heat, or a collapsing inward, or a desire to become invisible. Brené Brown spent decades researching shame and its effects across thousands of people. She found that shame is the most powerful predictor of destructive behavior. Not guilt, but shame. Because guilt says, fix it. And shame says, hide. Jung understood shame as one of the densest concentrations of shadow material a person can carry. The parts of ourselves most deeply buried are almost always the parts we were made to feel ashamed of. Not just things we did, but things we are. Our sensitivity, our neediness, anger, our desire, our ambition, our ordinariness. Each of these can become a source of shame depending on what the environment around us decided was acceptable. Shame also has a particular relationship with secrecy. Brown found that shame thrives in three conditions: secrecy, silence, and judgment. It loses power when it is spoken, when it is met with empathy rather than more judgment. This is why shadow work for shame is not about analyzing shame from a distance. It is about moving toward it, which is the opposite of every instinct shame produces. Every instinct shame generates is designed to keep it hidden. Shadow work is the practice of choosing differently. Grab something to write with. A journal, or the Notes app on your phone, or a document on your laptop. If nothing is nearby, you can hold the prompts in your mind. Find a position that feels settled. If you have something warm nearby, this is a good session to have it close. Take a slow breath in. And as you exhale, see if you can let your shoulders drop just a little. You are safe here. Whatever you are carrying into this session does not have to be earned or explained. There is no correct way to do this session. Whatever arrives is the right material. This session is for educational and reflective purposes only, and is not a substitute for professional mental health support. Shame can be some of the most complex material we carry. If what comes up today feels larger than this container, please reach out to a qualified therapist. The first exercise is called a shame inventory. It's not meant to catalog everything that has ever been wrong with you, but to get honest about what is actually there. Because most people have never done this. They have lived with shame as a background presence for so long that they have stopped noticing it as something distinct. It has become the water they swim in. The goal of naming it is not to make it worse. The goal is to make it visible enough to work with. Let's begin. Complete this sentence as many times as feels true. I feel ashamed of. Do not filter this. Do not evaluate whether the shame is rational or deserved. We are not judging the shame right now. We are mapping it. Write quickly without overthinking. Include the small things and the large things. Things from childhood. Things from last week. Things you have never said out loud to anyone. Let's take 90 seconds for this. Bring that to a close, slowly. Look at what you wrote. You may notice that the act of writing it felt exposing, even though no one else is reading it. That is shame doing what it does. It makes even private honesty feel dangerous. I want you to acknowledge something. The fact that you wrote this list is not evidence of how damaged you are. It is evidence of how honest you are willing to be. In shadow work, that honesty is the doorway. Most people never get this far. Now look at your list and find the one that feels the oldest. Not necessarily the most dramatic, just the one that seems to have been with you the longest. The one that feels most like a fact about who you are, even though it is not. Write it at the top of a fresh page. Give yourself just under a minute. Now ask yourself how old you were when this shame began. You might get a specific age. You might just get a sense of being very small. Small enough that the world felt enormous. And other people's responses felt like verdicts about your worth. Who was present? Whose response first attached shame to this part of you? A parent? A sibling? A teacher? A peer group? Or maybe a culture that had very clear ideas about what was acceptable. You do not need to write a full account. Just note who was present and what they communicated, through words or through actions or through silence or through the way they looked at you. Here is what I want to offer you very gently. The shame that was placed on you was not a verdict about your worth. It was information about someone else's limits, their own fears, their own unexamined material. People pass shame on not because they are cruel, but because they themselves were shamed. The same material moves through generations until someone becomes willing to look at it directly. That person is you. Children internalize shame, not because they deserve it, but because they have no other framework. When the people you depend on for safety communicate that a part of you is unacceptable, you cannot yet understand that they might be wrong. So you conclude that you are wrong instead. That conclusion made sense then. It was a survival strategy. It is not the truth. This next part is quiet. Let it be slow. Close your eyes for a moment, or soften your gaze to somewhere in front of you, and imagine the version of you that first felt this shame. The child or the teenager or whoever they were at that moment. Do not try to fix them. Do not rush to reassure them. Just see them. Notice what they look like, what they are feeling, whether they look small or braced or very still. Now, in your imagination, sit with them. Just sit. Not to offer solutions or speeches, not to promise that everything gets better, simply to be present with them in a way that perhaps no one fully was at the time. The act of witnessing without rushing to fix is itself the repair. It is not a technique. It is a quality of presence that the child needed and is receiving now even across time. If it feels right, you might say one thing to that younger version of you. Just one sentence. Something that was not said when it needed to be. It might be, "I see you." It might be, "This was not your fault." It might be, "You did not need to hide that part of yourself." Write it down. We've got about 30 seconds. Whatever you wrote is not a platitude. That is your own inner wisdom, speaking to your own wound. That is the beginning of what integration actually feels like from the inside. Not a dramatic shift, but a quiet, unexpected warmth, a recognition, a coming toward rather than a turning away. Come back slowly. Take a breath. Shame integration is not a single session's work, and I want to be honest with you about that. Because false promises about healing timelines are their own kind of harm. What Brown calls shame resilience is a practice, the gradual ongoing development of the capacity to be seen in your most difficult places, without being undone by that visibility. What we did today was a first step in a longer conversation between you and a part of yourself that has spent a very long time in isolation. And whatever isolation creates, connection heals. Not in one session, not overnight, but genuinely and sustainably over time. The part of you that identified something today has done the harder work. The practitioner in you will return to it. And each return goes a little deeper than the last. Your practice before the next session, when you feel shame activate, that familiar urgency to hide or defend or disappear or make yourself smaller, see if you can catch it and name it. Just say, "This is shame." Naming it interrupts the automatic cycle. You cannot work with something you have not identified. Thank you for staying with this one. Shame is not an easy topic, and the fact that you sat with it rather than away from it matters more than you might realize. The willingness to look is not a small thing. It is in fact the rarest and most important thing this kind of work asks of you. And you did it. This session is for educational and reflective purposes only, and is not a substitute for professional mental health support. If what came up today touched something significant, please consider reaching out to a licensed mental health professional. This session is a door. A therapist can help you walk through it with real support. Brown's research found that shame cannot survive being spoken. So here is something I want to invite you to do if it feels right. Leave one word in the comments. Just one word that describes what you were made to feel ashamed of. You do not need context. Just name it. You might give someone else the courage to do the same. If this session reached something real for you, liking this video puts it in front of someone else who has been carrying this quietly. Subscribing and turning on the notification bell means a new session is here every Monday and Thursday. Our next session is a discourse on the full psychology of shame, where it comes from in the culture as well as in the individual. And our inner critic session is already on the channel if you want to understand what shame feeds. If this session left you needing something gentler, deep rest sessions can help you rest tonight. Link in the description. The part of you that almost did not press play on this one is the part that needed it most. Until next time, keep going gently.